Part 1. The world before the Ottomans. Before the Ottoman Empire existed, the world around it was falling apart. In the late 13th century, Anatolia, modern-day Turkey, was a land of uncertainty. The mighty Byzantine Empire, which had once ruled the eastern Mediterranean, was shrinking rapidly. Civil wars, economic weakness, and constant invasions had drained its strength. Its borders were no longer secure. At the same time, the Mongol invasions had swept across Asia and the Middle East like a storm. Entire cities were destroyed. Trade networks were disrupted. Powerful Islamic states, including the Seljuk Turks, were shattered. Anatolia broke into dozens of small Turkish principalities called beyliks, each competing for land, power, and survival. This was not an age of stability. It was an age of opportunity. Frontier regions like northwestern Anatolia were especially dangerous. But they were also places where bold leaders could rise quickly. There were no strong central governments, no dominant empire to stop expansion, only weak borders and divided enemies. History shows that great empires often rise from chaos, and in this fractured world, on the edge of collapsing civilizations, a small frontier tribe would begin its journey toward becoming one of the longest-lasting empires in history. Part 2. Osman I and the Birth of a State, 1299–1326. In this unstable frontier world, one leader began to stand out, Osman I. Around the year 1299, Osman declared independence from the weakening Seljuk authority. He did not control a vast kingdom. He ruled a small tribal territory near Suut, close to the fragile Byzantine frontier. But Osman understood something powerful. Borders create opportunity. His warriors were known as Ghazis, frontier fighters motivated by faith, ambition, and the promise of land. Osman offered them more than just battle. He offered purpose. Every piece of land they conquered was distributed among loyal followers under an early version of what would become the Timar system. This created a powerful cycle. More conquest meant more land. More land attracted more warriors. More warriors meant more expansion. Unlike larger empires burdened by heavy bureaucracy, Osman's state was flexible and mobile. Decisions were quick. Loyalty was personal. Leadership was direct. Osman also built alliances through marriage and diplomacy, ensuring that neighboring tribes either joined him or stayed neutral. By the time he died in 1326, his small tribal movement had transformed into a structured principality. It was no longer just a tribe. It was the beginning of a dynasty. Part 3. Crossing into Europe, 1326–1453. When Orhan, the son of Osman, took control in 1326, he inherited more than land, he inherited momentum. His first major achievement was capturing Bursa, transforming it into the first true Ottoman capital. This was not just symbolic. Bursa became an administrative and economic center, proving the Ottomans were evolving from a tribal movement into an organized state. But the real turning point came when the Ottomans crossed into Europe. The Balkans were politically divided. Serbian princes, Bulgarian rulers, and Byzantine factions constantly fought one another. There was no united defense. The Ottomans used this division wisely, sometimes through battle, sometimes through alliances, and sometimes by offering protection in exchange for loyalty. In 1389, the Battle of Kosovo became a defining moment. Although both sides suffered heavy losses, the outcome secured Ottoman dominance in southeastern Europe. The Balkans slowly fell under Ottoman influence. What made this expansion different was organization. Unlike feudal European armies that relied on temporary troops, the Ottomans were developing a centralized, permanent military structure. Their leadership was stable. Their objectives were clear. By the early 15th century, the Ottomans controlled territory on both sides of the Bosporus. They were no longer a frontier state. They were becoming an empire. Part 4. The military machine. The true strength of the Ottoman Empire was not just courage, it was organization. At the center of this power stood the Janissaries, one of the most disciplined and feared military forces of their time. Recruited through the Devshirme system, Christian boys from the Balkans were taken, educated, converted to Islam, and trained as elite soldiers or administrators. They were loyal not to tribes, not to families, but directly to the Sultan. This created something revolutionary for the medieval world, a professional standing army. While many European kingdoms relied on temporary feudal levies, The Ottomans maintained permanent, highly trained troops ready for constant warfare. They were also early adopters of gunpowder weapons. Ottoman artillery became legendary. Massive cannons could destroy city walls that had stood for centuries. Their siege tactics were advanced, coordinated, and relentless. The empire also built a powerful navy, dominating key waters in the Mediterranean and Black Sea. Controlling the seas meant controlling trade and cutting off enemies. But discipline was their greatest weapon. Military campaigns were carefully planned. Supply lines were organized. Command structures were clear. The Ottoman military was not just strong, it was modern, and that modernization made them unstoppable for generations. Part 5. The Fall of Constantinople, 1453. By the mid-15th century, one city still stood between the Ottomans and absolute dominance: Constantinople, capital of the fading Byzantine Empire. For over 1,000 years, its massive Theodosian walls had protected it from invaders. Many had tried to conquer it. All had failed. Then came Mehmed II. Only 21 years old, Mehmed understood that capturing Constantinople would do more than expand territory. It would legitimize the Ottoman state as the successor to Rome itself. He prepared carefully. He built enormous cannons capable of smashing ancient stone walls. He constructed a fortress to control the Bosporus Strait. He assembled tens of thousands of soldiers and ships. In April 1453, the siege began. For 53 days, the Ottomans bombarded the city relentlessly. They transported ships over land to bypass defensive chains blocking the harbor, a bold and shocking move. On May 29, 1453, the walls were breached. Constantinople fell. The Byzantine Empire ended. The city was transformed into Istanbul, the new Ottoman capital, a global center of trade, culture, and power. This was not just a military victory. It was the moment the Ottoman Empire became a world empire. Part 6. The Golden Age under Suleiman, 1520–1566. When Suleiman the Magnificent took the throne in 1520, the Ottoman Empire was already powerful. But under his rule, it became unstoppable. In Europe, he was called Suleiman the Magnificent. Inside the empire, he was known as Kanuni, the lawgiver. Suleiman expanded the empire deeper into Hungary, captured Belgrade, and pushed toward Vienna. In the east, he secured Baghdad and strengthened control over key Islamic cities. In North Africa, Ottoman influence expanded along the Mediterranean coast. At its peak, the empire stretched across 3 continents: Europe, Asia, and Africa. But Suleiman's greatness was not only measured in conquest. He reorganized the legal system, blending Islamic law with imperial regulations. He strengthened the judiciary, reduced corruption, and ensured fair taxation. Stability became the foundation of prosperity. The Ottoman navy dominated Mediterranean waters, challenging European powers and protecting trade routes. Istanbul grew into one of the wealthiest and most cosmopolitan cities in the world. Grand mosques, palaces, bridges, and schools were built across the empire. Architecture flourished. Arts and scholarship thrived. Under Suleiman, the Ottoman Empire was not just feared, it was respected. Part 7. Government and Administration. Military victories built the empire, but administration sustained it. At the top stood the Sultan, the absolute ruler and supreme authority. But he did not govern alone. Supporting him was the Grand Vizier, the empire's chief executive, who managed daily affairs and led the imperial council, known as the Divan. The Divan functioned like a cabinet. It included high-ranking officials responsible for finance, justice, military organization, and foreign policy. Decisions were recorded carefully, creating one of the most structured bureaucracies of its time. The empire was divided into provinces, each governed by appointed officials loyal to the central authority. Taxes were systematically collected through the Timar system, where land revenue supported cavalry soldiers in exchange for military service. Unlike many medieval states, the Ottoman administration was not purely hereditary. Many officials rose through merit, education, and loyalty, especially those trained in the palace system. This professional bureaucracy allowed the empire to govern vast and diverse territories efficiently. Empires often fall when institutions fail. The Ottomans survived for centuries because their institutions were strong. Part 8. Religious Policy and the Millet System. The Ottoman Empire ruled over millions of people: Muslims, Christians, Jews, and many other communities. Governing such diversity required more than military force. It required balance. Although the Sultan was the political leader of a Muslim empire, The Ottomans did not force mass religious conversion. Instead, they developed a system known as the Millet system. Under this system, major religious communities, such as Greek Orthodox Christians and Jews, were allowed to govern their own internal affairs. They could run their own schools, courts, and religious institutions. Community leaders were responsible for collecting taxes and maintaining loyalty to the Sultan. This approach created stability. While Europe was experiencing brutal religious wars between Catholics and Protestants, the Ottoman Empire maintained relative coexistence among faiths. Non-Muslims paid special taxes and did not hold the highest military positions, but they were protected and allowed to practice their religion freely. This policy reduced rebellion and strengthened long-term control. The Ottomans understood something powerful. Unity does not always require uniformity. Part 9. Economy and trade power. Military strength wins battles, but economic strength sustains empires. The Ottoman Empire sat at one of the most strategic locations on Earth. It controlled the land routes connecting Europe to Asia and dominated key sea routes in the Mediterranean and Black Sea. Trade flowing from China, India, Persia, and Central Asia passed through Ottoman territory before reaching Europe. This position made Istanbul one of the richest cities in the world. Markets such as the Grand Bazaar became centers of global commerce. Spices, silk, precious metals, textiles, and ceramics were traded daily. The empire collected customs duties, trade taxes, and agricultural revenue, filling the imperial treasury. The Ottomans also minted their own gold and silver coins, strengthening financial stability. Roads, bridges, ports, and caravanserais were built to protect merchants and encourage trade. Control of trade meant control of wealth, and wealth meant the ability to fund armies, build cities, and maintain long-term dominance. The Ottoman Empire did not just conquer territory, it controlled the world's economic arteries. Final conclusion. The Ottoman Empire ruled the world not just through force, but through structure, through military innovation, through administrative organization, through economic strategy, through religious flexibility, through adaptation. They rose from chaos. They mastered geography. They built systems strong enough to survive generations. And even when they fell, their legacy remained embedded in the modern world. History does not forget empires like this. If you enjoyed this complete journey through how the Ottoman Empire ruled the world for 600 years, make sure to like this video, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss our next deep historical exploration. Because here, we don't just study history. We uncover the stories time tried to bury. This is the Forgotten Empire, and the next great civilization is waiting.